I will be building this K24 Accord. So you need to watch this part before you get started on the build, unless you've already built a turbo car and all the basics and everything. It's really important to watch this. Plus, there's a couple items that I didn't cover during the actual build video. This is, of course, after the fact. This is several months after I built the K24 Accord. Some details about the car. It's a 2003 Honda Accord, 5-speed manual, 212,000 miles. Ran and drove well. Nothing really wrong with it. And yeah, it was taken care of pretty well its whole life. After the video, after the end of this video, you'll be seeing here, you'll see the car without the hood. I'll probably actually edit in some photos of what the car looks like now and the hood dump and all that stuff. But yeah, basically I had to take a break with the car. So after I built the car, I went and did a pretty big burnout at a burnout pad, private property, all totally legitimate and everything, and toasted the clutch. So I bought a new clutch, and when I went to go throw the new clutch in, the installation went perfectly, but then the reassembly of the rest of the car, that took me like an additional couple days, but that was no big deal. But on one of the final transmission mounts, I ended up chopping my hand here with an angle grinder. I was holding the part here with this hand and the angle grinder with this other hand. Didn't follow all the safety procedures, and this here disc ended up cutting my hand here, and I completely severed two tendons, the tendons for extension. Of course, now I'm healed. I'm out of a cast. I'm good to go now. But yeah, just first, of course, make sure you follow all the safety precautions. So really the biggest ones are just safety glasses. If you're working with the clutch, probably put on a dust mask, or not a dust mask, but like an N95, N100 or whatever. Lift the car up on jack stands, all that stuff, because yeah, it's expensive. It was $40,000 in medical bills, but I have insurance, so it's not a big deal. Out of pocket, it wasn't a big deal, but it's just, if you're building this, just be careful, because stuff like that can happen. That was something that did happen to me. But now that that's out of the way, though, to begin with, the key takeaways here: don't buy the kit. So don't buy the it's like $600 or $700 Accord K24 kit. That doesn't include all the stuff that you need. So what you will need for sure is you'll need intercooler piping. I'll actually draw a little diagram of what you need to do. But you're going to need intercooler piping. You're going to need a turbo. You're going to need all the oil fittings. You're going to need oil lines. And actually, this stuff comes, you can get some of these things in a kit. So don't get the complete build kit, but get some of the stuff that you need in a kit. So like the turbo and all the lines and the intercooler piping, you can get that in a kit. And but the manifold I would get separately. You're going to need a 4-bar map sensor. I'll get into those items though later on. But yeah, basically get that kit. Get that smaller kit, and get some of the intercooler piping stuff. Maybe get it separately, or if you look into the kit, make sure it comes with. It's this here. It looks like this. Sorry if the noise kind of annoys you. Well, it's kind of like that. Either it'll have like a V-band, I believe it's called, type deal here, so that you can hook up the blow-off valve. The blow-off valve will go here, and it's got a little head like that. It's terrible drawing, I know. But yeah, it'll look like that. You need this here part so that you can bolt that on. And you will also need a fitting, so you're going to need a drill into one of these pipes, probably into here. And it could be into this one or any other pipe, and you're going to need a, drill a hole into there and glue in a fitting or thread it in or whatever, but make sure it seals. And that's going to be so that you can get manifold pressure out of there, so that you can hook that up to your wastegate, your blow-off valve, and your boost controller. So this is kind of a bad whiteboard, bad marker setup, but it'll hopefully work. So here's the theory, right? So you have your car, and your car has the motor and or engine, whatever you want to call it, and then you have the transmission that bolts onto it, your CV axles, and we're just going to assume a front-wheel drive setup. You're going to have, so let's draw that, right? So you're going to have your engine here, and the transmission is going to go that way, so you're not really going to see it. It's going to go that way. You're going to have your wheels, on that other side. You're going to have the exhaust coming off on the K24, right? So the car is going to look something like that. And you're going to have manifold that goes down like this. Manifold's going to go all the way back, or not the manifold, but you're going to have piping that goes all the way back. You might have a catalytic converter in here somewhere, muffler and a resonator. If you're working on the 2003 Accord, it's the 7th gen, I believe, Accord. It's something like that. It's a series, like a range of Accords that this all works for. So basically, what all we're doing is, so we'll actually elaborate a little bit more here. You have your intake manifold over here. It's not a very good photo there. And then you have your intake somewhere over here, battery over there on the driver's side of the car. This is the passenger side of the car. So the driver's side of the car, you're going to have like your battery and your intake and some other necessary engine components there. Spark plugs up here, fuel rail over there. So right there is where the fuel rail is going to be, and that's where your injectors are going to go. So all that we're doing with the turbo, I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to show more of a close-up on the motor here. So let's, here we go. So we have the motor, right? We have, see if I can draw it. It's the best way to, I'll just do this. Terrible representation of what the motor looks like. Looks more like a grenade, but whatever. You're gonna have your exhaust manifold. Once you have the turbo installed. You're gonna have the motor. The exhaust manifold is gonna be like this right here, and it's gonna have an area so that you can bolt on the turbo, and then it's gonna go like that. And then down here, you're gonna have an area to bolt on the wastegate. And here's what all of these components do. So the turbo is, that's terrible drawing of the turbo. Terrible, but please bear with me. Looks like a Peppa Pig drawing. So here's the turbo. And this turbo is going to have an impeller in here. I know that there's different there's probably correct and incorrect terminology, but this is whatever, right? So you have your turbo, your compressor or impeller, whatever you want to call that. I just call this the output. I call this the input, and that's basically keep it that simple. So air comes in through here, and the exhaust gas, let's see how that goes again. The turbo bolts on. So the turbo bolts on. You're going to have another area here for the turbo to bolt on. So that's going to bolt on somehow. You're going to have some fasteners, at least with this turbo kit. I think it's like the T3, T4 turbo type deal or whatever. You'll see that mentioned a lot in the eBay listings. And that's going to bolt onto the manifold. So the turbo is going to be on here like that. And you're gonna need a clock of the turbo. So you're gonna get the turbo, you're gonna see it, and it's probably not gonna be oriented the right way. So the output, where the air goes out, what we want to put into the manifold, that's probably not gonna be oriented the right way. So what you can do is you can loosen some bolts. It's gonna have, and just look up clocking, like clocking, right? Look up clocking a turbo, and you just loosen some bolts on the side. And basically turn it the way that you want it to turn. What you want to do though is you want to make sure that your oil drain is straight down and that your oil feed is straight up. So here, for example, the oil feed would go right there, right? And then your oil drain would go down that way. You need to make sure that it's done that way. Otherwise, you can run into a case where it doesn't feed and drain properly. You can end up starving the turbo or anything like that. If you starve the turbo, it'll get really hot. It'll either seize up or it'll blow up. So you don't want to do that. So once you do that, that's the turbo. Okay. So you're gonna start drawing your oil lines and kind of improve on this your drawing. In reality, it's gonna look a little bit more like that. You're not gonna have a cylinder that long, but down here is going to be your oil pan. So that turbo is going to need an oil drain. So you're going to need an oil feed and an oil drain. So the oil drain is going to need to go on, it's going to bolt onto the turbo, onto the bottom of the turbo. So there's going to be this adapter with 2 bolts that goes on the bottom of it. So you're going to bolt it on, and then you're going to get the hose. That hose that it comes with, it's junk. So with most of the kits, that hose that it comes with, it's just this black, like braided type hose. Don't even bother with it. It was leaking right away. I mean, if maybe I did it wrong, I don't know, but it was leaking right away. So what I did is I just ordered another hose, and it quit leaking. And it wasn't leaking in, you know, an insane amount, but it was like a drop every couple minutes. So it was kind of annoying. So yeah, you hook up your oil drain, and then your oil feed. It's kind of wonky. So the oil feed is going to go up on top, but how do you feed the oil? You have an oil pressure sensor. So if you look at the motor, if we, so say here's the engine bay, right? And then here is the windshield. Here's the front bumper. The engine is going to be like this. It's going to be something like that. Your exhaust manifold, once you have the turbo exhaust manifold, is going to go something like that. The turbo is going to be right there. And you're going to have your intake manifold over here. Not a very good representation, but just, again, bear with me. You're going to have your struts, you know, on each side. So basically, if you look over here on the passenger side, next to the passenger side strut, on the motor, you're going to have the VTEC solenoid somewhere around here near the top. And I know I show it in the video, so you know, just refer to that. But just so you have the general idea before you even get started looking at the video, if you're looking at this as a build tutorial, I think it's either under or next to the VTEC solenoid. There is this, it looks like a plastic type deal. And I showed it in the video, like I said, but you got to pull that plastic deal off of it, and then you got to unbolt the oil pressure sensor. So that's where you're going to thread in your oil feed. So my kit came with like a square type deal, and then it's actually threaded on each side. So there's probably looks like this if you were to look right through it. So on one side here, I had threaded deal that threads into the cylinder head or the block, whatever it is. I don't remember if it was on the head or on the block, but wherever it is, it threads onto that. Out here is the oil feed line. So it's this here. So in reality, it actually kind of looks something like this. So that's your oil feed line. And then over here is your oil pressure sensor, which you just thread onto that. And then I think over here was just a plug. I don't think there was anything else hooked onto that. So that's kind of what that looks like. So that's the way that's going to, so that's your oil setup. Your blow-off valve, oh, sorry, not the blow-off valve, the wastegate. I know I mixed those two up in the video a few times. So the wastegate, what that basically does is you have your turbo here, and we have, right over here is the intake manifold, and over here, let's just drop below, we have the intercooler. So what this intercooler does is it just cools the air coming out of the turbo. So the turbo goes like this. You have the pipe going all the way this way. Something like that. And then out of the intercooler, another pipe that goes this way into the intake manifold. Right? So the turbo's pushing air pressure this way. It goes through the intercooler, which I like to refer to as the filter, because if the turbo blows up, it just spits all that stuff into the intercooler. It doesn't go into the intake, which is pretty nice. But yeah, you have that basically right there. And what you're going to run into is you're probably not going to have enough piping, so you might want to make sure that it comes with enough piping. So honestly, look at whatever the kit includes and get a couple more 90s, a couple more 45s. Just spend the money, because it's a pain. I tried doing it the really cheap way, and it's fine. I mean, the project total. I'll make sure to make a note here. I'll make sure to add to cover that here near the end of this pre-video video, right? But yeah, spend a little bit more. Spend the extra 20, 30, 40 bucks to get a couple more pipes, just so that you can do it right, and so that you can put the bumper on correctly and everything, not have to chop it up. So basically, you're like I said, you're going to run into an issue where you might not have enough pipes, or it's not going to be the right pipes. I thought about another thing too. The turbo 90. That's going to be another thing that you're going to have to get eventually. But basically, that intercooled air is going to go out past the intercooler and into the intake manifold. Now, at some point in here, you're going to need to put a blow-off valve. So this blow-off valve is going to go On mine, it's really close to the intake manifold. It's like this. Looks a little funky, but it is what it is. And at some point later, so past the intercooler, but before this here blow-off valve, I have a hole so that I could get a little fitting out of there. And that fitting is really important. That fitting right there is really, really important, because if anything fails with that fitting, so if you disconnect that line or anything like that happens where you no longer have that connection, where you no longer have an accurate pressure reading off of the intake manifold, big problem, because you're going to get a boost spike, and I'll kind of go through that. But before I get into that, I'll draw the wastegate. So what the wastegate looks like is it's going to be at the bottom here, or it depends on how you orient it. But the way that I did it was I put the turbo on the top and the wastegate on the bottom. So what the wastegate does is it regulates how much pressure, how much exhaust pressure can go into the turbo. So this wastegate is going to go through here, something like that, and then there's a pipe that I'll just kind of exaggerate it. This is what mine looks like. There's a pipe that goes down past the axle, and this is where that excess exhaust goes. So I'll kind of elaborate on this though. But before I elaborate, I'm going to draw the boost controller, which sounds kind of complicated, but it's not. It's just a little. My kit came with a little deal with a knob, and you had the one side that goes in, one side that goes out. So you would hook up from this pipe, that pressure line in, and I had a T in here at some point, and that T went off into this for the blow-off valve, which I'll get into in a little bit. And then the boost controller went to the wastegate. So I know it looks complex. I know it does. It's really bad drawing, but make it look a little bit better. But this is the best. It's the best I can do here with this example. So basically, you have your so the turbo spools. So this exhaust pushes the impeller on the turbo, and that turbo is going to start to spool. Let's say that we don't have a wastegate. If it spools too much, the pressure is going to start moving up. So let's say we have a graph here of pressure and time. So as we move ahead, not pressure and time, as RPM and pressure. So as the RPMs increase, the pressure is going to start to increase too, right? You're going to get to a certain point where, let's just call it the death point, right? So with my car, I'm guessing it's like 13, 14 PSI maybe, sustained PSI. So let's just call this 13 PSI right here. And just call this RPMs here. Revolutions per minute and pressure and PSI. So once you get to this point, to that death point, you can get catastrophic engine failure. So we don't want to do this. We don't want to get past that point. So how do we do that? We regulate that using the wastegate. So what that wastegate does is it's just a valve. It looks like a pneumatic valve. So what happens is you hook up that line to the wastegate, and the wastegate has a plunger in it. So I'll kind of try to draw it here. See if I can come up with a good representation. And it's going to have a cap. Looks a little wonky, I know. Have your Beavis and Butthead moment and laugh at what that looks like. So let's see here. Bolts on one side. And on here is the output side. So this side here, let's just say that this side is going to bolt onto the exhaust manifold. And this side here is going to go out just to the atmosphere. And at some point in here, you're going to have a fitting. I think it's called a banjo bolt or whatever. And that's what the line hooks up to. So there's like a plunger in here, basically. Plunger type deal. And there is a valve, kind of like that. And there's a spring in here. So as the pressure increases in here, depending on the spring that you have, that valve is going to start to open. And it's going to allow, this is a pretty bad example. This actually isn't what it looks like. See if I can, I don't know, really bad example. okay, what matters is as this valve opens, it's going to allow exhaust pressure to go through. So this here gets hooked up to your intake to some point in your intake manifold. So that's really important because when you have that wastegate, hooked up, you're able to regulate that pressure. So instead of it looking like that, it's going to get to the wastegate point, the pressure point that you have it set to, depending on the spring, and it'll stay at that. So with the wastegate, if you get a cheap wastegate, what can end up happening is you'll start to get boost creep, where it'll fail, right? Like it's not going to be an immediate failure, but the boost will start to creep as you're doing a pull, and get past that point, something will fail. So that's the difference between like a good wastegate and a bad wastegate. What some people do with the cheap wastegates, the eBay wastegates, is they take like steel wool or like Scotch-Brite pad, and then they'll take the actual they'll take the valve that goes in there, they'll pull it out, and they'll like clean it up. I did that. I haven't had it fail on me yet. But yeah, that's just something that people do. And there's other videos covering that, so I'm not really gonna get too into the details with that. But that's what the wastegate does. That's its function. That's what it does. So you also have the blow-off valve, and what the blow-off valve does is, if you think about it, in here, this hooks up to the throttle. So that throttle has a throttle butterfly, which does this, right? If it closes, so it's like this. Once it closes, no air or very little air can get through, right? It needs to idle, so it's going to have like the set screw so you can set the idle or prep. I think on this car it's a little different. It's probably done electronically, but might have a set screw so that it stays cracked open just a little bit. But what it basically does is it opens and closes like this, right? That's the throttle butterfly. So what can happen is if you're doing a pull, if you're right in the middle of a pull, you're pinning it, right, first gear, second gear, third gear, and you let off, just right away let off the accelerator. You'll hear it in the video. It'll make like a noise. It's called a flutter, turbo flutter, and that's not good. It's not good for the turbo. Because what happens is, say you have everything hooked up, but no blow-off valve, your boost will look like this. Again, RPMs and pressure here. Your boost will look like this. You'll be accelerating. Boost will start to go up, and you'll just let off, quickly release, and you might get a boost spike, right? Like that. And then right after you let off, the boost will start to go down again. But of course, that's not good, right? We don't want that boost spike. Because when you let off, what happens is when you slam that throttle butterfly shut, that turbo's still spinning. So it's still creating pressure. So that pressure is going to keep going. It's going to keep going through. I did it backwards. So it's going to move forward, still pressurized, go through the intercooler. But by the time you slam that throttle shut, that pressure will still be generating pressure. So it'll go from, the second you let off, it'll start to go, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 PSI. It might spike up to 20 PSI, right? So when that happens, that could lead to failure of the turbo. I haven't seen any, because this is all off of YouTube videos that I've done. This is all I am not a professional. This is just my build. I did this just to learn and to have fun. Somehow the car is still running. But yeah, basically, it's probably not going to blow up your engine if you have a boost spike, but it will probably damage your turbo. So that's what the blow-off valve is for. What it does is you have a line hooked up to this, you have a line so that you get the manifold pressure going to that blow-off valve. So what it does is the second that the boost goes, the pressure goes above a certain point. Let's say that it's set up to open here. The second it gets to that, it'll open up, and the pressure will immediately, instead of doing that, it'll immediately, start bleeding off like that, preventing turbo failure. So that's what the blow-off valve does. The boost controller, this cheap boost controller, all it does is you have this pressure coming here, and this wastegate requires some other pressure to open and close. So you can sit there and you can change the wastegate springs every single time that you want to change your wastegate open point. And by the way, you test the wastegate open point with an air compressor. So you set the regulator to like 10 psi, hook it up to the wastegate banjo bolt with a plastic tube. Make sure that you are getting the pressure that you're seeing on your regulator, is exactly what's going into this. Make sure you don't have any leaks. So that's how you test it. Slowly move it up, 10, 11, 12, 13 PSI. Once it starts opening, that's how you know that where it's going to start to open. But what this does here basically is it restricts the air coming in. So it makes the wastegate think, so here, let me give an example. The boost might be going up like this, right? But this here, what it does is it basically keeps it a lot lower. So it'll go like that, right? So this is the actual boost that's going through, and this is what the wastegate is seeing. So if you have the wastegate set to open up right there, well then you can fool it right into letting it go, into letting more boost go through. So of course, if you have your wastegate set to like open up at 5 psi at the wastegate or 10 psi at the wastegate, but you want to make 13, 14 psi, here you can adjust your boost controller. With the one that came with my kit was not good. I put the lightest spring in it, and it still required too much pressure to open up. Or how was that? No, I don't think it was that way. I think it was that I was opening up too early, and I wanted to push more pressure. I think it was opening up at like 5 psi or something like that, and I wanted to make like 10 psi. So this boost controller, it wouldn't make a big difference. When I hooked it up, actually, it let way too much pressure go through. And the way that I knew what pressure was here was from the map sensor. So what the map sensor stands for, the manifold absolute pressure sensor, and that you see that in your software, your tuning software. So I used Ktuner software. You might use like Honda or whatever, but I used Ktuner, and that worked out pretty good. Just a base map, which means, by the way, it's a preset. It's like a out of the box tune or whatever, so you can get up and running and apparently just drive to the tuner. I never did any of that. I never got a dyno tune. I just ran on that and crossed my fingers basically. So yeah, that's kind of the importance of that boost controller, basically allowing. So what it does again is it allows you to have different pressures. So you can have a different pressure. You can have a pressure here at your intake manifold, and a different pressure going to your wastegate, so that you can fool it into allowing more boost to go here without having to change your springs. That's what it does in theory. They make electronic ones too. If you actually want to drive the car around more than 100 or 200 miles without it blowing up, I'd probably recommend getting an electric one. A good electric one, not a cheap eBay $600-700 turbo kit one. Okay, so okay, you also have your up pipe or your down pipe off of the turbo. So with mine, it came with the hood dump. The kit that I ordered, it came with the hood dump, which that's what I used, and I made a hole in the hood. Worked fine, but probably not super. I don't think cops would be too happy about that. So, or your local neighborhood or anything like that. So I suggest actually routing it the right way. I just wanted to get it running, driving, so get the project done basically. So that's kind of the overview of what you got to do. So your oiling, you need to get your oiling situation sorted out. You need to get your boost pressure plumbing situation sorted out with your blow-off valve, your wastegate, your boost controller. You need to have an intercooler. Of course, you need the turbo. You need an exhaust manifold. You're going to need a turbo oil fitting or whatever, so that you can hook up your oil pressure sensor and your oil feed line and everything. And you're going to need a 4-bar map sensor. So that is a must. You will need a 4-bar map sensor. That 4-bar map sensor bolts onto the the intake manifold, and I think it's just one, like 8 or 10 millimeter. So you got to take the old map sensor out and put the 4-bar map sensor in. So what might happen is you will load up your base map, and so you'll go in like your software and you'll load up turbo build, and then you'll set your injector size, because it'll probably ask you, hey, what injector it has to ask you, right? So it'll ask you what injectors are you using. In my case, 850 cc's, and then it'll ask you. You'll have the option. I shouldn't say it'll ask you. You'll have the option to set your map sensor. So that's really important, because different map sensor manufacturers are going to have different results. So without that map sensor, though, if you drive it around, it'll drive fine up until like 4 to 4,500 RPM, revolutions per minute, and then it'll start to go. It's not actually going to build. It'll build boost, but it'll just stutter. It's just really wonky. So it'll feel really nice at first. So it'll go, and then it's just going to start hanging up, which is I'm sure that looked really funny, right? So yeah, you need to get that 4-bar map sensor. One other thing that you will need, so let's start writing it down. So you're gonna need intercooler piping. Sorry for my terrible handwriting. You're going to need a turbo, of course. You're gonna need an exhaust manifold. You are going to need 4-bar map sensor. And you're going to need a turbo 90. So it's my turbo, it was I believe a 2-inch to a 2.5 that I needed. So this here, you'll see in the video, near the end of the video, the first actual run, that it was just really, like you couldn't even bolt the hood on basically, because it went too far up, and that's because it didn't come with that 90 necessary to have it all like stay in the engine bay and be able to close the hood. So just look up turbo 90 or 2 to 2.5 90, measure it. So measure your turbo outlet size here, and measure the size of your intercooler piping, and then get the 90-degree, the elbow for that, or whatever you call it. So you're going to need turbo 90. And you're going to need a tuner. I use the Ktuner, or you could use a Honda. And what else? You need to use 91 octane. You need to run 91 octane, otherwise it will knock. You'll have a knock count in your software. It'll give you a knock count, so you don't want to knock. That's terrible for the motor. And what else do we? Injectors, of course. I ran 850 cc's. I think stock it comes with like 2 something or 3 something cc's, 200 something, 300 something. I ran 850. So I got the cheapest ones I could find. I think they were like 40 or 50 bucks. But you're gonna need injectors. I got 850, like I said. And what else? Should be about all, honestly. The fire extinguisher is a good thing to have too. Let me see where I am on time too. Okay, it's taking a while, but important to watch. We're still going though. So, okay, so what's the project total? I spent, let's see here, I bought a Volkswagen Jetta TDI for like $600 some, and then I traded that for this car, so whatever. I mean, Kelly Blue Book value of the car probably would be like 1,500 bucks maybe. It's got a lot of miles. It's a Honda. At the time of this video, I don't know if maybe Accords will go way up or way down, who knows. So it's a cheap car. So that's the car. I'm not even going to include that in the price because you're going to have a different car. You might spend $4K on it. You might spend 300 bucks. I mean, whatever. But putting all this stuff together, my turbo kit was like, I think 700 bucks. So let's just say 700 from eBay. The 4-bar map sensor, that was I think $30 or $40. Let's just say 40 bucks. The turbo 90 was like 15 bucks. The Ktuner was I think $450. And the injectors were I think like 50 bucks. So yeah, whatever that is, it's not a lot. It's under 2K. So it's not a lot of money, the grand scheme of things. Now this is, if you set it up the way that I set it up, don't expect it to run good. I mean, if you want it to run well, if you want it to really perform well, use good parts. Honestly, don't use a 200,000 mile, 212,000 mile Accord. Don't use all eBay parts if you actually don't want it to run well. But if you want a project, just a fun car that you don't care if it blows up, yeah, this stuff works fine. I've put I think like 200 or 300 miles on it, just back and forth to the gym, running errands and stuff like that. It's fine. I mean, it's pretty loud, but that's about all. It's just sitting for now. And let's see here, what else did I think that's all that I needed to cover though. So yeah, that's kind of your setup. Oh, the intercooler too. The intercooler was I think like 100 bucks. So that was my bad. So for the intercooler, by the way, I got I think it's like a 90s, like late 90s Mitsubishi Eclipse, I believe, turbo or intercooler. All that you just need to make sure that you have the 2 pipes on the side. That's all that really matters, because the one that's going to come with the kit is going to look like this. Something like, it's going to look like that. So it's going to have the pipes on the sides. You don't want that. That's not going to work out, not easily. So just get that. That's, you know, save yourself the time. But oh, one other thing too that I ran into with the project, I had some Allens. So the Allens that came with the wastegate, those Allens, they kept on coming out. So I used red Loctite and I, you know, bolted them on good under the manifold, and they kept on coming out. So I just tack welded them, you know, whatever. But that tack welding them made them not come out anymore. But yeah, if you're running into that, I just tack welded them, but maybe use some better Loctite or use something else, but you can sort that out. But that was my solution. And the wastegate it's like this. So it interfaces with the manifold. So this is the wastegate upside down. This is kind of like a larger view of the wastegate. The manifold is up here. It's going to come with a ring, like a steel ring. You need to put that ring in there for preload. You need to have that ring in there. It keeps the valve open, I think, a tiny bit. So yeah, you need to have that. You need to have that on there. Otherwise, it's not going to run right, or not run right. I think it'll be like an exhaust leak or something like that. So you need to have that ring in there, and I think it's actually more like this. Then the Allens go in like that. Then that's your manifold. That's how it goes in, just like that. So yeah, those are the biggest things. Map sensor, the intercooler, that 90-degree and everything. So yeah, that's about all though. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you have any questions. Like I said, I didn't get it dyno tuned. Oh, you're also going to need, what do you call it, a boost pressure gauge, just so you know what pressure you're making. So yeah, that's about all. But let me know if you have any questions. Hello YouTube, here we are, Kevin here, Davis here. So this is a long-awaited K24 turbo build. When I say budget, I don't mean 1,000, 3,000. I'm talking the cheapest possible. So we went with the eBay turbo kit with the pop can turbo and with all the related items. So we have here the eBay intercooler, which this kit comes with this one here, but that's not the one that you're going to need. That one's junk. It's not going to fit. So you got to get this one. This one's for a Mitsubishi Eclipse. It was about 140, 150 bucks at the time of the video. And then we have the intercooler piping. This all comes with the kit. We have the pop can blow-off valve or wastegate or whatever. And the injectors are coming in. So yeah, when I say cheap, I mean the cheapest possible. So we do fully intend for, we expect this to blow up. Not a doubt in our mind that this thing's going to blow up right away, of course. So here's the overview of what we're going to do here. So we have this exhaust manifold. It's in its box over there. So what we got to start off with is we need to pull off this exhaust manifold. I did, obvious, as you can tell, I pulled the hood off. It's just these 4 bolts. So it's 2 here, 2 over there. Hood's off to the side. It'll help with being able to access things in the engine bay a little bit better. And as well as that, we need to, I gotta grab that heat shield. I got this heat shield. It's off, came off of there. Pretty well rusted. So pretty well rusted here. I don't know if maybe there was something to hold it on to the manifold. Probably, but in my case, that was all rusted off. So it was just 2 fasteners here. Pretty straightforward. So as of right now, we need to take off the exhaust manifold. I'll go ahead and show it here. So make sure you guys can see it there. So that's the exhaust manifold. We got to pull all the bolts off of there. don't know if y'all can see it there pretty good, I hope. Once that comes off, install the new exhaust manifold. We have to clock this turbo. So basically, this turbo here, it's going to get bolted on either like this or probably like this actually, so that the exhaust can come off this way. So this turbo has to be clocked. So I'm probably going to turn it so that this here is facing upwards so we can hook up some of the intercooler piping up to that. Then, after we do that, we need to get intercooler piping from up here down to here, and it'll go through there, hold the battery off as well. There's my junk ground. And it'll go to the hot, well, we're gonna have a hot side and a cold side. That cold side's gonna come right back up. This is all gonna come off, and hopefully it'll still run after that. The injectors, the new injectors are coming in 850 cc. These are the stock ones in here with the stock fuel rail. And one other thing that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to pull off the ECU. So in this case, with this 2003 Accord, gotta grab my light. The ECU is in there. Gotta make sure y'all can see this pretty good. The ECU is in there, so you gotta pull that off. So here's the rundown with these. You can't, if you have a 2003 or 2004 Honda Accord, you cannot use that for tuning. You need to get a 2005 Honda Accord ECU. Doesn't matter if it's manual or if it's automatic, but it has to be a 2005 Honda Accord ECU. And once you do that, I don't have the ECU here, I got it in the house, but you take that ECU, hope you all can see this pretty good here. You take the ECU and you solder. If you pay somebody to do it, they're going to take care of it, but if you do it yourself, you got to solder some female headers into it so you can put the tuner into it. Of course, like I said, off-road use only. And once you do that, you can hook it up to your laptop. Honda, as far as I know, they don't offer any options for these Accords because this has a K24 A4 motor. So you got to go with the Ktuner. And the Ktuners, you can't do the OBD2 option. It has to be the in-ECU solution. So you need to tune it. You need to set up the forced induction, of course, with all the piping and everything. And you need injectors at the bare minimum. Like I said, we expect this thing to blow up. Whenever you set something up as cheap as this, we did the compression on here, and there wasn't a single cylinder that was above 130. So, I mean, they were all within 10%. It was, I think, 125, 125, 125, and then 121, with the last one here being 121. So, we don't expect this to last very long, but it's more of a, just to see if it can be done easily. So, that's what we're going to get started with. We're just going to pull off this exhaust manifold, and we're going to start mocking everything up. Hopefully, this doesn't give us any trouble. We don't anticipate anything to happen, but if something does pop up, we will keep you updated. Alright, so this wasn't quite as bad as we expected. None of the bolts needed to become cherry red for us to pull them off. They all came off at regular, the ambient temperature, which is pretty nice. So yeah, this manifold's pretty loose here. If you're following along with your build and this doesn't come as easily as it did for us, good luck, because yeah, stuck manifold bolts are an absolute pain. So now what we got to do is we got to lift the car up so that we can get that down pipe disconnected, pull everything off, and then we can mock the this manifold up. I apologize for my crappy camera skills here. I just want to help out a little bit. There you go. Make sure you can see pretty good here. So here's the so if these are pop can parts, these here are, I don't know, spare rims. They take rims and melt them down. Oh. Sand casted rim parts.
The camera does.
Yeah, it does that. Oh. So yeah, we got to get this thing on. This is where, I'm not even going to incorrectly name it. It's just, this is where this goes. Something like that. So this will do something like that. It'll bolt on. And then we got to get another pipe to go up. It did come with it, so that's got to go up off through the hood. And the turbo, hopefully the turbo can go down. I don't know yet. We're going to do what's easiest. We do have welders and we do have stuff for fabbing up an exhaust, but I would like for it to come out kind of nice, but if it's too much of a pain, we might have to do it. If it bolts on, might have to do it this way. So we'll see, whatever. So we got this manifold off. It was not bad at all. Looks like it actually ran a little, looks like it ran a little lean, maybe. I don't know. It's definitely going to be running lean for a little while until we get those injectors. But yeah, basically here it is. These weren't the issue at all. The only issue was these rounded off, but that's fine because these, which were bolted right onto the block, were totally fine. So now we get to mock it up. I will show you guys what it looks like in there. So I want to make sure that you all can see in there pretty good. Now, if I grab my flashlight, right there, that's where it went. That's one of the studs that was on there. So we're going to pull off that gasket, maybe clean off the mating surface a little bit, and we're going to set up that other manifold. So what we did was we got that manifold off, like I said. I think I already showed that. So we moved on to the wastegate. This is the next pretty important part here. So the wastegate is the cheap eBay wastegate. I know that there might be a little bit of controversy in the comments saying, oh, it's the rods that are going to go first, or the crank's going to go first, or you know, the valves will go, whatever, you know, a million other things that could go. But from what I've seen from my research to the wastegate, you know, there's boost creep. Your boost goes too far up. So say you have it tuned for 10 psi, which really, from what I saw, K24 is stock. You really don't want to go past 10, 11 psi because then you can run into catastrophic failure. So say you have it tuned and say you have it set for 10 psi and you start getting some boost creep, starts moving up to 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 psi, the motor will blow. So what I did was you got your wastegate, so right, I'm probably not the proper grammar there, but say you purchased your kit and you got this cheap wastegate, this right here. I'm not gonna try to decipher how to say that, but you got this here eBay wastegate. What this one came with and what yours will probably come with is several springs. So this one, I don't know if this one's just for maybe adding a little bit of extra spring tension. If you want to go between 10 psi and a 15 psi crack of the wastegate, but it came with this one installed. This one is quite heavy, so I took the lightest wastegate spring and I threw it into this thing. So what you do is you just pull off these 6 bolts, these 6 Allens, and it'll come off. It probably won't come with these banjo bolts installed and all that stuff, so you're going to have to install these and put the seals between them. I don't know what the torque specs are. Again, this probably is only going to last around 50 miles, if that. I'd be surprised if it even makes it to the next town over. But to give this thing its best chance, I put that lightest spring in there. And then what you can do to test a wastegate is you go onto this bottom port, you hook up a vacuum line like this. You hook up your vacuum line. I had my compressor running over there. So you take your compressor, you set the regulator, and you go in increments. I went in increments of about 5, so 5 psi, 10 psi, and whatever it starts to crack at, that's what it's set for. Now, of course, this is a cheap wastegate, so whether it's going to stay, if it's going to consistently open up at 10 psi, I don't know. But with that lightest spring, it was between, was it like 8 and 10 psi days? So yeah, between 8 and 10 psi. So of course, so if you're just doing this, if you're going cheap the way that I am, you're going to want to pull this off. You're going to want to take the heavy spring off, and you're going to want to put the lightest spring in there, and then move up from there. Because if you go too heavy of a spring and you're making too much boost, like, yeah, you can monitor it in your boost gauge. Oh yeah, I can see that I am running 20 psi, so I'm going to stop. But you don't know if it's going to be too late by then. So you'll find out when parts of motor and a whole bunch of oil are on the ground. So make sure you do that. Pretty important part. But now that that's addressed, what I'm going to do is, where did my manifold go? Here it is. So I'm going to take this manifold. It is unidirectional, one direction. So what you do is you're going to put it on like this. The turbo is going to go on top. and this wastegate's going to go on the bottom. The reason that I say it's directional is because if you pass me that manifold, this original manifold, notice 3 fasteners on the bottom, 3 holes for the fasteners at the bottom, same deal here. So that's the only way that it'll go on. So you put that one on, this wastegate's going to go like this, and we're going to want to have some sort of pipe here to go down or up through the hood. We're going to have to figure that out yet, but yeah, we're going to have to put this on and start mocking it up from there. Alright, so here's where we're at. We had the turbo up here. We installed the manifold. So we got the turbo. We had to pull the turbo from under there up into here. And yeah, so here's the turbo. We got it clocked. So if you don't know what that means, what that is if you get this turbo, it might be like this side is pointing down, of course, but then the compressor housing will be pointing like this way. And of course, you can't have the compressor pointing towards the block, because then how are you going to get, you know, so what you do is you loosen these here bolts and you rotate the whole housing. It looks counterintuitive. It's like, oh, well, is this thing holding these in? Well, no, it's like some sort of ring, some pressure ring or something like that. And there is a seal in here, so don't pull it all the way off. So just loosen them until it's like quarter turn past, hand loose, if that makes sense. And then what you can do is, well, you got to make sure that your oil input is on the top, so that you have oil coming in from here, and then oil will drain down from here, if that makes sense. So once that's set, well, I don't know if this is going to be like an instructional slash we're learning through it, because I've never done this before. So yeah, once this is on, that's what we're going to do. We're going to bolt it on, and we're going to start mocking up all of the intercooler piping, which is right here. We also got the wastegate set up, but we pulled it off of the manifold. Originally we had the wastegate on the manifold, but what ended up happening was we couldn't get the last bolt. So there's 3 on the bottom, 2 on the top, 2 studs on the top, 3 bolts on the bottom. The middle bolt we couldn't get in because the wastegate was in the way. So we pulled the wastegate off and put the new gasket on there and everything, bolted it on, pretty good to go here. So yeah, the only other thing that I could think of that might be problematic is pulling off the oil pan. So we're going to have to pull the oil pan off, and then I'm going to I'll look in here through some of my tools. I'm going to have to use something like this to get, I think one of these here, to go in there, and I'm going to have to weld it in place. So I think it might be one of these, I don't know. We'll figure it out. So yeah, we'll go from there. I think we're going to call it a night though for today. So the next time you see us, it should be morning or daylight. It's getting dark outside, as you can tell. Okay, tubes, we're back here on the turbo build. So it is a new day, as you can tell. The turbo, I installed these here studs. So I got the turbo up here. I believe we already went over that. I pulled the oil filter. All these items are minor. These are all minor items. If you got this far, if you're following along and you got this far, you know, it's probably pretty easy so far. Also, threw this on here just to see if it would fit. It does. Here comes the crappy part. So you need to install this oil drain line. So the kit that I got came with this line. So I assembled the line. This here line hooks up like this. So you take your line, you put it in this red deal, then you bolt this all together. And then this here is going to go onto the turbo. This is the drain line. So the drain line is going to get hooked on, like I said, to the turbo. So first we got to find that turbo somewhere. Okay, it's down here. So you grab your turbo. It's all fine and dandy. The square end, that's your drain line. So that bolts on. That's great. That fits perfectly. Now, I saw another video, the guy, he put a restrictor. So your oil feed, where does that come from? That comes off of your oil sensor, I believe. So that's all the way back there. It's right next to your oil filter. Since the oil filter's not in here, you're not going to be able to see it, but it's right next to your oil filter. That's where you'll find your oil, where you're going to hook up your oil feed. So the oil feed is fine. That's not necessarily an issue at all. It's pretty straightforward. The issue is your oil drain. So how do you get this hooked on? So my kit came with, it didn't come with this. I had to go to a Tractor Supply store to get this. So I have no idea where I actually left that other part. It was an aluminum deal. So this aluminum fitting needed to go onto the oil pan, right above the oil line, and I'll show you all where that goes. So it needs to go above the oil line. So when that turbo is draining, when that oil is draining out of that turbo, it goes in there, obviously recirculates. So that's pretty straightforward in theory, but well, what do you got to do? You got to go and install that. So I went and grabbed this, and the plan is to weld it in place. So, okay, that might be a roadblock for some of you guys. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Sure, you can go and get another one, get like a washer or some type deal and, you know, bolt it together. You can go ahead and do that. I'm not. I have a POS welder there, so we're just going to use that. Or, well, and actually there is no or here. So basically, this is where the problems begin to arise. So in this 7th gen Honda Accord, you need to pull this here oil pan. That's where the issue is. You need to either drop the subframe or lift the motor, or both. I don't really remember. I looked around and I could not find a single way to pull this oil pan. Looks like I got some company here. Somebody just pulled up here with a trailer. Anyways, you gotta remove the subframe, and or you gotta lift the motor. So that's not fun. We don't want to do that. That's a huge job. You know, that's just going to be a pain. It's going to make this a lot more ridiculous. Okay, I'm rambling on. So what am I going to do? Well, you got to pull all of the bolts off. So at first there's going to be a mount type deal. It's like an engine mount or something. I don't know what this is, but that goes between the transmission and the motor. Got to pull that off. They're just 14mm bolts. Once you get that off, you get all these little 10mm bolts in there. I don't know if you guys can see this very well. I'm recording with the GoPro. You got to get the bolts in there. So those are fine, but then you need to go in here. I did this. Get an extension, 1/2 inch or a 1/4 inch drive. Get a U-joint and get a 10mm. Pull these off. There should be 3, and then this one right here at this side. By the way, you got to pull the tire off. Obviously, you need to take a wrench and you need to pull that off. So once you do that, you can remove the oil pan. And once you got that oil pan off, you should be able to weld the fitting in place. So once I get that far, I will continue. Okay, so here's the progress. After quite a bit of struggling with this here oil pan, I did finally get it loose. I pulled the oil drain plug once again so that I could drain the residual oil in there. So let's try to take a look in here. Once I pulled it off, this came. See, I do apologize if it's a bad angle. See, I have a flashlight here holding it on top of the GoPro. So this should come down like that. And of course, the subframe is in the way. This is why you need to, if you're going to replace your oil pan, that's why you need to drop the subframe. So they say. So I do apologize. I hope you all can see that in there. So right in here, I can barely see what I'm doing. Somewhere around there, above the oil line, I'm gonna want to make a hole. So I'm gonna want to make a pilot hole up there, and then I'm gonna take my step bit. I'll show you all what that looks like, and then I'll make that hole. I'll make it low enough so that I can still weld around it, get the welder, get that MIG welder around there. But other than that, there's not much to it other than to just do it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and start making the holes, start mocking stuff up. Looks like it can't go too far in there because we do have what the light's pointing at right there. That might get in the way. But yeah, I'll keep y'all updated. So. Okay, so here's where we're at. I took the step bit. I got this step bit kit from Honda Crate a while back. You take the step bit, take that fitting. There was such little space up here, under here maybe, that's a better word, that I used that jack instead. And I got a jack stand over there. That step bit, well, first I drained off more of the oil. Probably can't see a whole lot in there. Turn my light on. See all the sparklies in there? Some people refer to that as fancy oil because it's sparkly. So what I did is I took that step bit, I made the hole, then I took this wheel here, the cheap Harbor Freight angle grinder. I put one of these flap wheels on it. Then I cleaned that all up. So now what we can do is we can take that fitting, if I can find it. It's right under the towel, shop towel. Take the fitting, that'll go in there, kind of. So I'll try to get that in as far as I can. Maybe pound it in a little bit. Sticking out on this side a little bit. Again, you guys probably can't see that. Turn on the light here. I hope that's a goodish angle. I used to wonder when I would watch I don't know if you guys can see, but now that I have this GoPro, even though it has this fancy screen on it, it's really hard to see what's going on. So yeah, that right there, we're going to try to get that as far in as we can. And then we're going to start welding. So I'm going to lay a small bead. Oh my gosh, so I can't. Oh, it's so hard, that subframe's in the way. So I'm going to lay a bead all around that, and yeah, something like that. I'll lay a bead on there. Then I'll probably take some RTV and put the RTV on top of the bead. So I'll weld a little bit, clean it off, and then weld again. So and then I'm going to put some RTV on there. Then I'm going to cross my fingers and I'm going to hope it seals. So yeah, we'll go ahead and do that. Okay everyone, so I got the welder fired up and everything, and then I welded all this here in place. I don't know if there's a way to where to put this other than it came out like ass. It is easier. I know some people say, I've seen some videos on YouTube of people attempting stupid stuff like this, and they like, you know, they go and say, oh, these welds aren't going to win any competition. Well, no, these, like, unironically, these welds are not going to win any competitions. As a matter of fact, these welds may not even seal. However, with that being said, it is what it is. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this pan out, try to get some of those sparklies out, and wash that down. First I'm going to wait for this to cool down because I don't want to start a fire. Once that is taken care of, I'll clean off these mating surfaces on here and up there. Then I will I'll put all this back together, and then we can move on to the installation of the oil feed for the turbo. After that, after we do the oil feed, we're likely going to want to set up the wastegate, and hopefully by then we should be able to do the intercooler piping. Now, with the intercooler piping, we do have a small problem here. The turbo's compressor set here, this is, I don't know, inch and 3/4, maybe 2 inches. It's not even perfectly round. So I'm going to need to get some sort of adapter to go from this to this, which is 2.5. So that's on the list of items that I'm going to need to purchase didn't come with the kit. So if you're watching this, hopefully you're watching this before you purchase the kit. At this point, of course, I have no idea whether or not this is going to blow up. So hopefully by then you'll know whether or not it's even a good idea to do this. My guess is that this will last maybe, I don't know, a couple miles of runtime. I'm thinking I'll be able to tune it. So the tuner came in as well. So thinking I'll be able to tune it and hopefully do a couple burnouts on private property, like actually on private property, on a private concrete pad, and hopefully it'll last up till that point. But if not, it is what it is. It's been a pretty fun project so far. So like I said, I'm gonna go ahead and take care of those items down there, and I'll keep you guys updated. Okay, there's been a change of plans. So what we're gonna do instead is we're gonna use a whole bunch of JB Weld, like probably use this entire set. So we're gonna try that, see how that goes. I think that'll, so here's my logic. With the silicone, once I apply it, I have a feeling that it might not bond to it very well. I'm not sure. It's steel it's a steel fitting and then a steel oil pan. However, obviously, right, I welded it. Duh, something that's pretty stupid now that I say it out loud, but it's, I have a feeling that it'll seal better. Whether, is that even a thing for it to seal better? Either it seals or it doesn't. So I have a feeling that it will seal. It'll have a better chance to seal with JB Weld rather than using some RTV. So we're gonna try that. Okay, everyone. I was just about to pack everything up for the day, but I forgot to provide the update. So it's pretty dark in here, but you should be able to get an idea of what I did. If I can get this creeper all the way back. So I JB Welded the crap out of this. So you all can see that. Give it its best chance there. JB welded it all around. So now we're gonna play the waiting game. I think I'm done for the day. So that's that update. All right, tubes. We have hope again. We got Davis here. So again, new day. This is the I guess technically the third day of the build. It's the second day of the week, Tuesday, because I did a little bit of work on it on Sunday. So here is the update. I applied some black RTV to the gasket mating surface here. I bolted it on to like foot-pounds of torque, and yeah, it should be good to go. I also flushed out the oil pan. So I lowered this as much as I could, and then I rigged up this here. Where is it? This here. So it's just a gear oil bottle. You take it and you put a hose inside of it, like in the nozzle. Then you squeeze it and it just shoots the fluid out. So of course it's not gear oil in there. It's just diesel mixed with some other lubricants. And I used that to flush this here deal out. So once that got flushed out, I verified with my phone and the flash. I looked in there, no sparklies, no fancy oil. The what do you call this stuff? The JB Weld. It's all cured surprisingly quickly. So now that that's done, now that the oil pan's on, we can move on to that there, which will be that's the oil pressure sensor over there. So we're gonna have to pull that off and yeah, install the stuff that the kit came with. Also, I also should put in the new oil filter as well. Probably be a pretty good idea. All right, so I did do one more thing that I forgot to mention that might be a good idea to do. So right over here, I'm sorry that it might be kind of hard to see, but right over there, you might be noticing that something's missing. It's the VTEC solenoid. So I pulled the VTEC solenoid off. It's a 3 10mm fasteners there. You can pull the shield off of it. It's your shield, it's up to you. I didn't because there's nothing really to clean back there. So I took this off and I cleaned out that mesh, I cleaned out the body of the solenoid, and I cleaned out all the little galleries in there. So the reason you want to do this is because if you're working on one of these and you go and turbo them, or honestly, you don't even have to turbo them, just on any K-series or any Honda with a VTEC solenoid, if somebody didn't keep up with the oil changes, this little mesh can get clogged. And it actually was pretty dirty. Not super dirty, but it had some material in there. So cleaned it off with some carb clean, put it back together. Just a preventative maintenance item. You know, while you're in there, you might as well take care of it. So thought it'd be important to bring up. All right, everyone, so now we're going to hook up our oil feed. So what you need to do to hook up your oil feed is you need to remove this oil pressure sensor. It's it threads in right here. So just to make it easier to get to this, well, I shouldn't say to make it easier, I removed the solenoid, as you all saw, to clean it out, but I left it out, and I also removed the oil filter just to have a lot of room to play here. I might also remove this here shield, but it might not be necessary because I have quite a bit of motion here, quite a good range of motion here. So I took this out. I got lucky, it wasn't on there super tight. I just used an adjustable wrench. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this here. So I also do need to go pick up some thread tape. So I'm going to put some thread tape on all these here deals. So this is going to get threaded onto that. This is going to get threaded on there. The oil pressure sensor will be threaded on this side. The oil feed will be threaded on this side. I know it's kind of hard to see. This side here, oil feed. This side here, oil pressure sensor. And this side here, I'm thinking I'm going to cap it off. I'm guessing maybe it's for another oil pressure sensor, for a second oil feed for the turbo. For another turbo maybe, I don't know. But that's what the plan is. Once that gets set up, we're going to be able to hook up our oil feed, install our turbo permanently, quote unquote permanently, and reinstall the VTEC solenoid. Also do need to reinstall this here mount for the motor / transmission. And we should be able to start cranking the motor. I'm going to pull the oil, the oil pump relay, so that we can just crank but have it not start. And I'm just going to be doing that so that I can prime that line and just see if there's any other leaks. But yeah, once we do that, once it's primed, we should be able to do our first start. Okay, everyone, so here's how I set up this here oil feed line. So I put this connector, you can call it that, for this here deal basically. I put this on one side. This is going to thread onto the block. Once that gets threaded onto the block, depending on the position of these two holes, because it's 4-way, I'll put the plug in on one of them, and then on the other side. So the plug's probably going to end up going here, if this is how it ends up on the block. On the other side, the oil pressure sensor will go in, and then on the back side is where the oil feed line will go for the turbo. So that's what that's going to look like. Alright, so this is how I got it set up. I put the filter in, and I don't know if you all can see that there, but I got the line put in like that. So the line, that fitting that I demonstrated earlier with that deal at the end goes on here. Goes into the block. I put the oil pressure switch up here, and then I hooked up the braided steel line here, and then I put the plug at the bottom. Now in retrospect, it may have been a better idea to put the steel line up here, and then that oil deal back here, and then maybe to keep this one plugged, because the exhaust is going to come down here like that. But it is what it is. This can go like that. I might be able to make some space, because the exhaust is going to come down here, or I might do a hood dump if I can figure out how to get it to fit. So next step is to permanently install the turbo. Oh, and the what do you call it? The VTEC solenoid. All right, everyone. So oil line is hooked up. Turbo is bolted on, think I already went over that. Got the oil in it. No battery on it quite yet. I got the drain line hooked up. Doesn't look like we're leaking any oil yet. Yeah, that looks like it's sealing pretty good. So we're gonna get the battery hooked on and we're gonna go ahead and start priming this thing. All right, time to start cranking it. So what I did here was I hooked up the old ECU just so that it would crank. There's the old ECU. Here's the tuner and the injectors. I pulled fuse number 19. So over there should be your fuse box, right above your engine, or your whatever you call it, HUD wheel. So time to start cranking it. I need you guys to go and check for leaks. Ready? Okay, turbo should be primed by now. Let's give it another little bit just for good measure. All right, should be good. So I'm gonna hook this back up. I'm gonna hook this back up and then we'll get a start video. All right, we're ready to go. So we got somebody over there filming on Snap. We got that fuse hooked back up. Let's try to start it. First start. Fuel pump's running. Got turbo spinning. Check for oil leaks. No oil leaks. We're spinning. Somebody coming for it right here. Make sure here. Cover the turbo. Make sure that turbo's running. Right here. Actually, I should be able to do it from here. First start. Heck yeah! Alright everyone, so now we're going to work on the ECU here. So first thing you do, you take your multi-tool, loosen these 4 screws. So when it comes to the ECU, if you have a 2003 or a 2004 K24 Honda Accord, you cannot use the stock ECU. I think I've already mentioned this before. You need to use an ECU for a 2005. So you can go and pick one up on eBay, used, or at the junkyard or wherever, and you can. Like this one here ends with A54. I don't know how well you guys can see that there, but if you go on the Ktuner website, it'll tell you what it needs to be. So now we also need to pull it off of here. Probably would have been a better idea to use my drill, but we're already this far. Feel free to skip ahead, of course. This might be kind of boring to watch. It's also a good idea before you do any of this, if you do order, apologize for that, if you do order an ECU from eBay, just plug it into your car, connect the on 2003, on my 2003 Accord, There's 3 connectors. You pull apart the ECU for the 2003. These here connectors all have don't have wires connected to them. So it has the space for the connectors, but they're not actually connected to the board at all. Whereas with this newer one, they are connected to the board for what it's worth. Now that that's done, should probably preheat the soldering iron. Got a pretty slick one here. Heats up pretty quick. Then you remove the board. Make sure you're not missing any screws. Looks like this is one that you also have to remove. So never want to force anything like this. Always take your time. Start forcing things, that's when things start to fail. Also, if you're outside working on your car and then you come in to do this, make sure you wash your hands. It's not a good idea to introduce any contaminants into this ECU. Now that this is removed, you can go ahead and lay your ECU down wherever you're comfortable working on it. Set your case aside as well. Then you take your ECU kit, which is right here. Luckily, the seller did include some headers here. Your kit may or may not include these headers. If not, you need to go and purchase them somewhere. If you do need to purchase them, this is what they look like. Let's see here. It's a 2x10 for the long one, and it's a 2x5 on the short one. Set this off to the side. Set these items off to the side as well. Now that this is heating up, I'll go ahead and add, well, I'll probably want to tin the tip first. Not the best solderer, but I'll get the job done. So you're going to want to heat up your pads. Looks like these luckily already had some solder applied to them. I suppose it's not that important now that I think about it, because they do already have some solder in them. I'll add a little bit of flux here too. Okay everyone, so here's the result. It's probably, again, it's very difficult to see. Let's clear off some of this here flux. So what you got to watch for, here is what you need to watch for. You need to make sure that all of these connections have a solid, it's a good solder joint between each one of these pins and the area on the board. So if you can get them to look sort of like this, the way that these other ones look, if you can get them to look like that, make sure that none of them are jumped as well. So if you have a solder jump, that is going to be highly problematic. So make sure that that's well soldered. But that's about all. Now that this is put together, you can go ahead and install this Ktuner. Like this. Very gently push it in. That should be all. Reinstall it into the ECU and test it out. Hook it up to your car and make sure it all looks good. Other than that, that should be about all. Okay everyone, it's the next day. I mocked up some of the intercooler items. So mocked up the intercooler, mocked up some of the piping, removed a deal that went here. It's somewhere here on the ground, I think. Anyways, let's see, I added this 90 here. So I did run into a small predicament. I'm gonna need 2 of these, one for here so that I can go like that, and then another one up here so that I can do that. I did also need to go and purchase this deal so that I could bolt it onto the turbo. So I'll hook the turbo, and then there's also a PVC deal in there, your reducer or whatever, so that I could hook this onto there. It's not looking the best, but I think I might go without a head for a little while. I also fabbed up this exhaust, what do you even call that thing, the wastegate. So this will go on the wastegate, and this thing's getting chopped just so that the wastegate gases don't go right into the cabin. At least they'll be pointed downwards. This came off of a Mark III Volkswagen Jetta TDI. Maybe mufflers somewhere around here. So something else I need to do, I need to get this here. I don't know if I'm going to even be able to weld it. Looks like it's Chinesium pot metal, but I'll give it a shot. You only got one shot anyways, so if that doesn't work, I'll just JB weld the crap out of it. Hopefully that'll seal. But what I'm gonna try is I'm gonna try to TIG weld it. I'm using a Miller Synchrowave. So, oh, and then also this here deal. This is also gotta get put on here. So I'm thinking I'm probably gonna go like that. I might remove this here thing just so that I can get a little bit more clearance. Or I might chop this down a little bit. That might also give me a little bit more space. That way I don't have to start removing any engine components. I do have this here pipe that we could use. This should work pretty nice. That way I can have a pipe going all the way up here. Like that, like a tractor. And maybe put a tractor flap on top of it. I don't know yet. I did also remove the exhaust. That's sitting over here. There's the exhaust. So I got all this free space down here. Maybe at some point I might put some piping all the way down under the car, but probably not. Like I said, I expect this thing to blow up, so kind of want to get it to the point where I can tune it and go from there. If it makes it past that, then we'll start worrying about everything else. So that's the status here. It's the progress. Sorry for my less than desirable camera work. Okay, so here's the status on the build. So I needed to go, so this looks terrible. I already know. So with what they included in the kit, it wasn't enough. So I think I might add a little portion to the beginning of the video, just for somebody who's thinking about getting started on this, just to kind of get a feel for what they're going to need. Don't buy the kit. Don't buy the kit that's apparently for the Civics or for the Accords. Just forget about it. It's garbage. It's overpriced. So I looked, and you can find all the same stuff for cheaper on eBay. So you can get all this stuff except the manifold for, so this stuff and more, except the manifold for it's like $400, yeah, right around $400, $450. The manifold itself you can probably get for about $100 on eBay. So it's kind of ridiculous when you think about it, because I had to go out, I had to purchase this deal, purchase a piece of PVC. It didn't come with anything for so I had to fab this up for the blow-off valve. Even the kit that I saw, the cheaper kit that I found, actually had another piece of pipe like this, except it had a deal for the so you could draw a vacuum, I think, and for the blow-off valve as well. This doesn't have any of that. So that means that I'm gonna have to go and I'm gonna have to either JB weld or TIG weld, or I think I already mentioned that. I'm gonna try TIG welding this so that I can hook the blow-off valve onto here. So that's just It's kind of ridiculous that didn't come with it, but it is what it is. I also needed to purchase this here. It's a 2-inch deal, so I used that. It came with, so I didn't have enough clamps. It didn't have enough of these blue things. I mean, just overall kind of sucks, but you know, what do you do? So what we're gonna do, we can't even start it, I suppose, because where would I even mount the battery? I might just plop it on top of all this junk, actually. That might work out. I do have to install some new injectors still, so I'm probably gonna do that right away. I'm gonna get this here bolted on for the wastegate. I really should plumb up the wastegate. I really shouldn't even be running this thing without the wastegate because we're gonna get some pressure spikes. So let's go ahead and take care of that right away. All right, everyone, so here is how the intercooler got set up. So that's about set. It's about ready to go. I did a couple more test starts. Starts up good, doesn't leak much oil. It leaks a tiny bit of oil. So I'm changing the injectors right now. It's got these here connectors. You just, clips or whatever, you clip them off, pull this off. Then you remove these 2 bolts, or these 2 nuts I mean. Then just got to pull on this apparently. Looks like they're almost there. I might have to remove this here deal so I don't put too much pressure on this here. And then I do have this line here that I might have to cap off. I don't think that'd be too good to just leave that open. But once that's done, I'm going to do a couple pulls without the new ECU, just to see how it is. Oh shit.